I'm David Wilkins, President and CEO of Zenapptic.AI, which is a software and creative services company. I'm going to talk today about using virtual production to drive audience engagement. I'll talk a little bit about our software, but I'll show a lot of examples, and then I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So we're talking about virtual production. You might be wondering why there's elephants and giraffes on my screen. Nothing to do with broadcast TV, but it's a platform that's running everything, and I promise I'll come back to that at the end. Some more familiar things like broadcast graphics, elections graphics, sports graphics. We do a lot of different things using a lot of different types of content for a lot of different outputs. And part of the reason for that is, I'll call this coming full circle. I started in the broadcast industry with my first company, Vertigo X Media, 20-something years ago, where we did live graphics for events like Monday Night Football, Super Bowl for Fox. We did elections every 2 years, news graphics. We built an automation platform for live television graphics. I sold that company to Miranda Technologies, which is part of Grass Valley now. And I launched a second company called X2O Media. X2O is all about enterprise visual communications. At first it was out-of-home networks, then it became retail, then it became education, and it was a platform that took real-time content and used it for communications. I sold that company to Barco back in 2014 or so, and then I thought I was actually finished. But during my break, everything changed, right? The world changed. There was a pandemic, new technologies came along, and I realized now was the time to get back in with my third company, which is Zenapptic.AI, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. In a way, it's the same ideas that we started doing for Monday Night Football 25 years ago, but it's reimagined. It's coming full circle. And we're providing a platform that lets you create content really for any output device. And in effect, everybody becomes a broadcaster. Zenapptic is a mix between a technology company and a creative services company, like I mentioned before. Been around a long time, worked with a lot of different brands in broadcast, in enterprise, in a lot of different markets. But always the same thing, combining technology with real-time content. Some bread and butter examples here in broadcast, live news, live sports, elections. That's where we came from. But where we've ended up is with a new platform called Zen3, Zenapptic.AI. The whole idea here is a platform that lets us still do a lot of the things we did in the old broadcast days, but by adding a lot more interactivity, a lot more user engagement, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So before I get started, let me talk a little bit about where broadcast has come from, and I'll just throw all these on the screen. In the early days, you didn't have a lot of choice. It was a one-way communication. Content went out, everybody sort of watched the same thing. Fast forward to today, and things have changed. There's a lot more remote working, a lot more virtual production, a lot of different ways of doing the same things that we started out doing when there were only 3 networks. Going forward, we've realized it's not about the broadcast medium anymore. It's about giving users or viewers the content that they want whenever, wherever, and however they want to consume it. And that's really the story behind Zenapptic.AI. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So in the old days, content went one way. Everyone saw the same thing. It was a one-size-fits-all model. Today, it's not like that at all. It's a two-way model at the simplest. It's probably a many-to-many sort of model. And it's all about connection with an audience, creating virtual communities, creating experiences to create engagement. Engagement is what I really want to talk about today. The last 2 words on this slide, experience and engagement, are how we do that. So experiences are where it starts. Everything these days is an experience. Everyone wants an experience. They just don't want to watch static content anymore. They want to interact with it. They want to experience it. They want to share it with others. So everything's becoming an experience, whether it's a Sphere in Las Vegas or you go to the corner shopping mall. It's all about connecting users with content to create engagement. Experiences drive engagement. It's all about creating that value for users. When engagement goes up, all of these other things go up as well. Ultimately, viewership, brand awareness, the amount of time people watch your content, and the overall attention. And then the other thing that goes up, sorry about my word wrap there, engagement, dollars go up. And it's not necessarily dollars from ad revenue, it's customer satisfaction, it's employee satisfaction, employee retention. It's about value that you create by creating that engagement. Virtual production gives us a few different tools for creating that engagement. It's not just about a one-way broadcast anymore. It starts with creating virtual spaces. I'll show some examples of that in a second. Virtual worlds, where you can put interesting content in and bring users in, viewers in, to experience that content in these virtual spaces. And create virtual communities. Everything we do at Zenapptic fits in perfectly with this concept of virtual communities, and that's a great example of what virtual production can give us. We combine that with real-time content. We're not just playing videos on a loop anymore. It's content that's changing dynamically. Users are messaging with each other, with the content. They're interacting with the content. They're sharing content. They're taking content with them at the end of the experience. And then this last point here is a really interesting idea for virtual production for a lot of different markets as well. It's gamifying the content. It's about rewarding users for interacting with the content in the way that you want them to. So these are the tools that we can use with virtual production. I'm going to play a couple of examples here of this video. Just let it play for a second. This is our demo reel. It covers an experience that we built late last year for the Diversified Global Summit. We created a virtual environment, and we put a lot of these examples I'm talking about into it. A lot of real-time content, virtual elements, virtual interactivity. I'll just let this run through, and then I'll come back and I'll talk about some of these specific examples. I've got some screenshots of this. Interactive polls where the audience is giving their real-time feedback. Corporate content. The environment's actually tied to the time of day, so it's getting dark. We're showing different corporate presentations, different polling, different activities, live presenters, interacting and doing dynamic storytelling, which I'll talk about in a second. Interactive features like selfie walls, for example. Social media integration is huge as well. And these are all things that we add on top of your typical virtual production. I'll move on from here. And I'll talk about some of these examples a little more specifically. It starts with the idea of virtual spaces. That's what virtual production is all about. Creating branded environments that you can do interesting things in. The brand can change, the time of day can change, the content can change, but it's your environment. In that environment, you can do things with your audience. You can create this connection with the audience where they interact with the content. The simple polling examples in this elections example. Dynamic storytelling. So people talk about storytelling as a big thing in broadcast, but this is dynamic storytelling. The story changes based on what people are doing in the environment, who's connected to the overall experience. We use tools like AI for that, real-time content, real-time data feeds, interactivity, user profiles, and we create these overall dynamic experiences for users. Surveys I've talked about. For virtual production, people can scan a QR code, download a mobile app, and vote interactively, dynamically, with these real-time results shown in 3D on that virtual production to a live audience, to a live remote audience, to live broadcast. Mobile is always a big part of it as well, and usually when we talk about some people talk about virtual production, they don't realize that mobile can be part of it as well. It's not just a one-way push, like I said before. We want the two-way interaction. We want to create a community of users who are interacting with the content in your production. So mobile experiences, real-time data, big part of where we come from at Zenapptic, but taking annual meeting data, CRM data, ERP system data, your net zero energy consumption data, bringing it all into your live production where it's not just a PowerPoint slideshow anymore. And social engagement, social media, X tweets or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok videos, AI-driven experiences. I talked about this earlier a little bit with selfie walls, but these are selfies that are actually extended using AI. This is facial tracking, updating the content on the screen. I think some of those selfies look a bit familiar. Audience reactions are also, because we're connected with the audience, and that's the whole point of virtual production or a bi-directional virtual production, we can actually get feedback back live from the people who are watching that production, live messages, live reactions. It gets very interesting when we go to the next level beyond traditional broadcasting, but bring some of these concepts into video conferencing with tools like Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, where your broadcast now is going out to a whole range of new users anywhere in the world using desktop tools like Teams and Google Meet. We can also bring in people remotely. We teleport them in to the shared experience. We've got multiple people from different places in the world participating in this live virtual production. Talk a little bit about how we do some of these things using the Zenapptic.AI platform. We'll just throw a couple of these things on here quickly. For virtual production, we create a library of templates that users can use for different platforms to create different content or as a starting point for different content. We customize that content. We have a creative services team that does some really high-end broadcast quality work, either using our library of templates or creating completely custom environments. We have our immersive features, interactivity, the ability to bring people into that environment. We work with different real-time rendering engines. Some of the examples I showed earlier were built with Pixatope. We have our own rendering engine that does some AR graphics. We work with other engines as well. And that's a key part of our story. It's all real time. It's all virtual production, but it's photorealistic virtual production. And then an often overlooked part of this kind of production is the behind the scenes analytics, the data that we're analyzing, where we're keeping track of who's in the production, who's watching what's on the screens, on their computers at home. And based on that, we can analyze those results with AI or simple rule-based algorithms and control the content that we see on the screen, all using that Zenapptic Zen 3 platform. So we have different features that let you create these kinds of virtual productions. I talked about most of these already. Interactivity, connecting with the audience, real-time content. But it goes on top of the traditional broadcast graphics model where we're pushing in one way. We're really trying to create that concept of community. What's next is also very important. I'm here talking about virtual production on big LED, direct view LED or LED volumes, but there's a lot more coming down the road as well. Things like artificial intelligence. Zenapptic is actually Zenapptic.AI, and it's called that for a reason. We use AI in a lot of different ways, starting with this basic rule-based AI. If this happens, do that somewhere in the system. We can bring in biometrics, and we can really know the audience, and we can control the content based on who's in front of the screen. We can generate content using AI. So all of the visuals, all of the 3D worlds that I'm talking about, the different environments, can actually be created on the fly using AI. And then behind the scenes, we can analyze everything. We can run machine learning models on the data that we collect, and we can control everything that happens on the screen. And we add this extra value to our customers on the end, where they know exactly what happened during that virtual production. So AI, we've only sort of started with AI. It's really the tip of the iceberg, and some really big things coming there. And some of the other things people know about, Zoom and Teams are doing interesting things. We've got Vision Pro goggles, MetaQuest goggles, we've got web browsers, we've got streaming video. Lots of new ideas coming down the road that extend the traditional broadcast approach to producing content and create some really interesting experiences. And that's really the key word. Experiences drive engagement. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much.